are okay with being recorded, no worries. If you would rather not be recorded, I just ask that you keep yourselves muted throughout the presentation. At the end of this meeting, at the end of the session, we will go ahead and stop the recorder and invite you to ask questions. I do ask that if you have questions throughout, just go ahead and put them in the chat feature and I will be sure to answer them at the end. And the last thing I want to do is ask you to have your chat open because we're going to be doing a little bit of interaction today because I want to make sure that we all understand the whole red flag scenario. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. We may have some others joining throughout today's presentation, so we'll just keep moving, and if they miss anything, they can certainly check it out, the recorded version. So today we're going to break red flags into kind of two different arenas. First, we're going to talk about the red flags of general scams, and then we'll go a little bit more specifically into the red flags of investment fraud and scams because there are some minor differences in the two, but it's important that we understand both sides. So let's first talk about the red flags for general scams. The first red flag I want to talk about is someone contacting you out of the blue, someone you don't know, calling you over the phone, sending you an email, sending you something in the mail, or even knocking on your front door. Anytime you've got someone that comes at you with an offer or an opportunity out of nowhere, that needs to be a red flag. Maybe you got a letter in the mail or an email telling you that you won a prize. But in order to claim that prize, you've got to pay a fee. Anytime you win something, that's a win. You don't have to pay a fee in order to collect it. So that's definitely a red flag. If someone tells you that in order to do something, you've got to buy a gift card to pay for it, that's a big red flag, particularly if it's someone who's called you on the phone or said you owe this debt and we want you to pay with an iTunes gift card or an eBay gift card. Or someone that you don't know is telling you that you have to provide your personal or financial information. Now, I say that, but we need to keep in mind that there are times when we need to provide our personal or financial information. As we go into tax season, that's a great example. If you're going to hire someone to do your taxes or you're going to use a free service, we all know that we have to provide that information. We have to give up our social security number and where we live. And if we want direct deposit, we're going to need to provide the routing number and account information to those professionals. But those are people that we trust because we are hiring them. They're not calling us out of the blue. So I think it's important to understand the differences there as far as providing that personal information. So the next thing I want to talk about is someone tells you that in order for you to do this, you can't tell anyone. Don't tell, because then everyone's going to want the opportunity. So that's a big red flag, right? Or if someone tells you that this offer is only good today, if you don't make a decision right now, in an hour or tomorrow is definitely going to be too late. We all know that when we're shopping, there are sales, and time is important during that kind of a scenario, but it's never a situation where this is a sale offer that's only good for the next 5 minutes and you have to make a decision immediately. So make sure that we understand how that works as well. So the next general scams I want to talk about, and this is a really important one, is you receive a cashier's check or a money order for a payment on something that you're selling, or you get a cashier's check for a prize that you've won. Make sure that you understand that when you sign the back of a check, you're telling your financial institution that you know that the check is good. And if by chance it's not, you're going to take responsibility for that payment. So let's say you got a check for $5,000 and the person who sent it to you says, congratulations, you've won a prize. We need you to send 2,500 of this money by a wire transfer, or you need to buy gift cards, and then you can keep the other $2,500. That is a red flag that you are working with a scam that has to do with what we call an advance fee or a counterfeit check. And the eighth red flag that I want to talk about is if something sounds too good to be true. And I have to tell you, in all of the 10 years that I've been doing outreach and the 6 years that I took consumer complaints, I never quite understood before that when my mom would tell me if it sounds too good to be true. And then I started talking to consumers who had fallen victim to different types of scams. And it dawned on me that my mom absolutely knew exactly what she was talking about. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So it's important that we keep that in mind. So now I'm going to check, or first, let's see. I hope that I hope that you have been able to see how the red flags often there's multiple red flags in any specific scenario. So I want to now ask you all to open up your chat box, and I'm going to read to you a few different scenarios. And in the chat box, I would like you to just let me know if you're recognizing one of the red flags that I talked about early on in this session. So remember that interaction in this is going to be fun. And I want us to make sure that we're understanding some of those red flags that we need to be aware of. So Steve got a call from a man who said he was from the IRS. His caller ID came up and said he was calling from Washington, D.C. And the person on the other line said that he owed unpaid taxes. Steve knew that he'd always paid his taxes on time and he didn't owe any money to the IRS. But the person pushed and said he absolutely did. And if he didn't pay right now, if he didn't go online and say that and wire transfer that money or go buy gift cards, then he was going to be arrested. Steve recognized that the IRS is never going to call. So that's great, Rick. Thank you for sharing that. And they're certainly not going to require an immediate payment for taxes with a gift card. So yes, those are some red flags. So Bill received something in the mail that he won $1 million in a foreign lottery. The mailing said that he needed to pay $500 to pay for the taxes in order for him to claim his winnings. Now, with the letter, he received a check for $1,500. And he was told to cash the check and wire transfer that $500 for the taxes, and he could keep the other money. Bill knew that foreign lotteries were illegal, and he knew that he hadn't entered any, so he knew that he should just throw the mail and the check in the trash. So yes, that absolutely was some red flags. We don't want to pay for a prize, and we shouldn't have to pay the taxes in order to get our winnings. So those are all really great catches. How about Roberto, who got a text message that said it was from his bank? And the text message said he needed to call a toll-free number in order to reactivate his debit card. Roberto had just used his debit card and he knew that there wasn't anything wrong with it. And he also didn't recognize the number on the text message he got. So he called his bank on the back, he called the number on the back of the credit card of his debit card and realized that the text message he got was definitely a scam. Absolutely, Rick. Thank you. We always want to call that main office when we get a text message that tells us that we need to go to a website to provide our personal information. So how about Dolores, who got a call from a man who said, "Grandma, it's me." And Dolores recognized the voice. She said, "Mike, is that you?" And the caller said, "Yeah, Grandma, it's me, Mike. I'm in trouble. I've been arrested. And I need you to send me some money. But whatever you do, don't tell my parents. My parents would be very angry." So Dolores sent some money by wire transfer. She sent the $750 that Mike said he needed. And then she got another phone call. And the other phone call said that it was Mike's attorney. And Mike's attorney was going to require that Mike pay more fees. And so Dolores, recognizing that there was some red flags, decided not to send any more money and called her daughter and asked her daughter if Mike was in trouble. And she found out that Mike was not out of the country, that he was at home studying like he was supposed to be. Absolutely, Rick. Thank you so much. Ask for the name of the police department that's involved. Kim, thank you. Definitely. Any family member that wants us to send money using an email or a question or a phone call needs to be aware of that red flag. All right, so we've got just a couple more minutes. I want to talk about John and Mary, who were trying to sell their timeshares in the Bahamas. They received a call from somebody claiming to be from the Bahamas, and that they'd found a buyer to buy the unit and pay cash. But the caller said that Mary and John needed to pay money immediately to cover some of those fees. When John and Mary said that they needed a couple of days to think about it, the person on the other end claimed that if they didn't act quickly, they were going to lose the opportunity. Absolutely, Ryan. Thank you. Too good to be true. And we never want to pay advanced fees. Exactly. If that was a legitimate offer, the real estate person could have coordinated that any fees would come out of the buyer's money. Absolutely. So those are all really, really good examples of red flags. And you guys did a great job. Rick, you're right. They did lose the opportunity to lose their hard-earned money. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So I hope that you enjoyed that. Let's move on and talk about some of the more notorious red flags for investments. So I downloaded this image from FINRA's investor education website, and it kind of talks about some of the different red flags, and I thought it was very useful. So I've included it. When someone tells us that we're guaranteed to get a certain return on our investment, or they tell you that if you don't act now, that the investment opportunity is going to be over. So again, some red flags that are very similar to what we talked about during the first part of this, where we talked about general red flags. But I do want to talk about some other ones. So anytime someone gives you an opportunity for an investment and they tell you that it's guaranteed to return X amount of money, on the investment. We need to know and we need to understand that no investment is guaranteed. That's why it's called an investment and not a a deposit account. It's not a savings account. It's an investment. With investments come an inherent risk for loss. And nothing is guaranteed. If you look at the market over its history, you see that it's full of ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and sometimes things crash really quickly, but they build back up, maybe not as quickly as they go down, but again, that guarantee, there's no risk associated. Or someone tells you about this great product, and when you contact your state securities regulator, you find out that the product itself or the investment opportunity is not registered. All investment opportunities have to be registered with the state securities commission or at the federal level. So again, that's that red flag. If you're offered something before you invest, make sure that you verify that the opportunity is legitimate. And I'm going to provide you with the resources to check that legitimacy at the end of today's session. So another red flag, and this is one that was relatively new to me, when someone tells you that this investment has earned 15% every year for the last however long, or every month for the last 14 months, because we know that the market ebbs and flows, and sometimes it goes down and sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes up really slowly, sometimes it stays the same for a while. So those overly consistent is a red flag that is completely made up. Complex strategies. So years ago, when I was taking consumer complaints, I became aware of an investment fraud where the person that was marketing called these mortgage opportunities for investment a drop wrap around. And, the reality was it was super convoluted. And they provided pretty glossy pictures, but none of it made sense, and it was incredibly complex. So that needs to be a red flag when the person who's trying to tell you about the product or the strategy is telling you that it's super complicated and you probably wouldn't understand, or they themselves maybe are trying to explain it in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense. It's clear that they may not understand it. Or what about with your investments, suddenly there are documents that are missing, or you don't get them with the initial investment. That's also a red flag that we need to be aware of on that missing documentation. Two more red flags I want to talk about. Account discrepancies. If suddenly your account has a bunch of money that's going out of it and you haven't had those fees go out of it before, that's a red flag that your investment professional may be doing things that they shouldn't have done in the past, or maybe things that they didn't do in the past. That's a red flag. And as much as we all laugh about pushy salespeople, the reality is that even though the salesperson may be on the up and up, if they're overly pushy, maybe they're trying to get you into a product that doesn't make sense for you. Or it's a product like some of those red flags that we talked about before. This today only opportunity, red flags. And as much as we hate pushy salespeople, and we don't want to have to deal with them, we also want to make sure that that pushiness is a red flag, and it causes us to take a step back and really think about what we're being told and the opportunities that they're trying to push us into. Because maybe the reality is that if we investigate what that person is trying to sell us even further, we'll realize that it's definitely a scam. So, we want to avoid those pushy salespeople. Again, they tend to raise lots of red flags. So now I want to talk to you about Sam. And so we're going to do the same thing that we did with the earlier scenarios, but this is one story that I want to tell you about a woman who invested her hard-earned money. So as you hear the red flags in the story that I'm about to tell you, just let me know that you've heard it in the text box. So Sam is a single mother of two. She works a full-time job in the agriculture world. And she invests regularly with a reputable investment firm. But she's been saving to buy a house for years. As I said, she's got two young kids. In 2008, a coworker told her about the opportunity to make big money by investing in pots and pans that were going to be sold to restaurants and culinary schools. The opportunity guaranteed that Sam would earn 200% on her investment. Her friend told her that the investment was already making a big difference in her life. It was giving her and people she knew the opportunity to buy homes, cars. Some of them were even quitting their jobs. She said that the return on the investment was guaranteed and it could not lose. Now, Sam had known her coworker for 12 years and she trusted her. Sam said she was like an older sister. She knew my kids, I knew her husband, and we worked closely. I kind of looked up to her. And she's so smart. So I thought that she wouldn't do anything that would be too risky, or that I didn't think that she would lie to me. So the coworker showed Sam her own account with what ended up being a pyramid scheme. The company was called One Pot, and the coworker showed Sam all the money that she had invested. She said that she had supported the opportunity because they were quality pots and pans that culinary schools and restaurants were going to be wanting to buy. And again, she guaranteed that that she would get at least 200% return on her investment. I see there's a couple of responses. Absolutely. Dorinda, there is no investment that gets guaranteed. And Ryan, never bypass doing your own homework because you get the information from a friend. That actually is it's a type of fraud called affinity fraud, where people make friends with us to take advantage of us. So eventually, Sam paid $5,300 to her friend directly into her bank account. She paid for part of it was money that she'd been using to save for her sons. So she got her sons involved in the one pot opportunity. A week later, Sam went to a one pot seminar. And it was there that she decided that this wasn't necessarily the opportunity for her. She heard lots of red flags. And she told her coworker that she wanted her money back. But her coworker said it was too late because she verbally agreed to One Pot's terms and conditions, even though she had never seen them and never heard them. Once Sam got access to her online account, she was able to read the terms and conditions and realized that her sons couldn't join because they were both under 18. And they also was no guarantee for the return on the investment. So that's two red flags, right? Her coworker continued to refuse to pay any of her money back. Sam eventually so her friend stopped returning her calls. She basically ghosted her. And that was another red flag. Eventually, Sam went to their employer, and the coworker refunded part of the money, but she ultimately lost that $2,300. Sam says that this was an expensive lesson for her to have learned, but it reinforced for her that if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So you're right. There were quite a few red flags in that scenario with Sam and her coworker. We have to do our homework. We can check the information with our state securities administrators. And that's where the Department of Banking and Securities comes in. I love to provide resources. So today's resources come from my office, again, the Department of Banking and Securities. And I'm going to provide you with a toll-free number to call so that you can verify investment opportunities are registered. But I want to talk about saveandinvest.org, which is the FINRA Investor Education Foundation. FINRA is a self-regulatory body of investment professionals. They sort of take responsibility for regulating each other. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was a new federal agency that was founded under the Obama administration, has lots of really great materials at consumerfinance.gov, where you can learn more about red flags of scams and investment scams. You can always call my office at 800 PA Banks. The trained professionals there are really good at answering calls. When you call, you won't have a menu button to push. You'll get in touch with a real life person. And if you've got the investment opportunity of a lifetime being presented to you, they can help you to understand whether or not it's a legitimate offer, because they have access to finding information about registered offerings. So make sure that you check them out. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the 5 steps you need to take if you become, Kim asked if I could go back to the previous screen. Is it that one you want, or is it the one with the resources? I will tell you that if you send me an email, I'm happy to send you the slide deck. I'll send it as a PDF so that you have it with all of the different resources available. And you can have all of those, all that information for you. So Wednesday, we're going to cover the 5 steps we need to take if we're a victim. Thursday, we're going to talk about basics of scam prevention. And then Friday, we're going to play a fun game of consumer fraud bingo. As we play the game, as we have winners that come through, I will ask them to send me their mailing address, and we'll even be sending out prizes. So you don't want to miss the opportunity to play consumer fraud bingo. You can register for all of these events through our Eventbrite platform. It's www.padobs.eventbrite.com. I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop the recording, and I will invite you all to unmute yourselves or to post your questions in the chat box, and I'll be happy to